We begin here the narration of the well-known story from the Old Testament about Noah's Ark, and what we can take as a lesson for our lives from this event that marked the world. Initially, Noah's challenges in a wicked world can remind us of our own struggles in our time. Therefore, we can learn some lessons that will help us in our journey. During the pre-flood world, evil multiplied as rapidly as the population of that time. Humans engaged in depravity and corruption because they rejected God. Genesis chapter 6, verse 11. Although there were some righteous men who served God, despite being surrounded by evil, most notably Enoch, over time, more and more succumbed to the corruption around them. They married women who turned away from the ways of the Creator and were quickly absorbed into the wicked society, completely losing sight of God and His law of love. Upon seeing the terrible state of the world, God regretted creating humanity. Genesis chapter 6, verse 6. So God looked upon the earth, says the book of Genesis, and indeed it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. Verse 12. He made the decision to destroy that generation and start anew. However, God found a righteous man to whom He extended His mercy. And God said to Noah, "The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth, and behold, I myself am bringing the floodwaters on the earth, to destroy from under heaven all flesh in which is the breath of life. Everything that is on the earth shall die. But I will establish my covenant with you." Verses 13, 17 to 18. Well, from now on, we can extract some lessons from this brief introduction to Noah's story. First lesson: we can grieve the heart of God with our sin. God is a good father, and He loves His children. Just like any good father, our disobedience and sin grieve the heart of our Heavenly Father. In the days of Noah, the people were so sinful that God's heart was deeply hurt. God was grieved by sin then, and He is grieved by our sin now. He cannot simply ignore it because He is a holy and just God. As the book of Genesis, chapter 6, verses 5 to 6 say, "Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that He had made man on the earth, and He was grieved in His heart." Second lesson: God always provides a way for us to start anew with Him. God must judge sin, but He is also merciful, loving, and full of grace. He will never leave us without a way to return to Him. God desires a relationship with us and is always willing to go above and beyond to provide a path for it. Even during deep sin and a global flood, God provided a way for Noah and his family's salvation by closing them in the ark. He is willing to do the same for you today. It is never too late for new beginnings because God will always provide a way. In Genesis, chapter 7, verses 11 to 13, it says, "In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened. And rain fell upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On the very same day Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Noah's wife and the 3 wives of his sons with them entered the ark. Then the Lord shut him in." Third lesson: we may not always understand God and His ways, but we can trust Him. Noah must have wondered if God's plan was the best because, After all, a global flood seems very challenging. However, God had an eternal plan in mind. He knew that the sinful state of the world was self-destructive, and He loved the world enough to intervene. Ultimately, His plan provided a way for you and me to reach salvation. God sees the bigger picture, so we should trust Him even when we don't understand His ways. In Isaiah, chapter 55, verses 8 to 9, we are reminded that God says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." Fourth lesson, we can obey God even if the world thinks we're crazy. Speaking of things hard to understand, Noah must have faced a lot of opposition. People must have been unkind and laughed when he built a massive ark when it had never rained, as God told Noah it would. However, Noah obeyed and held on to what he knew was right, and God rewarded his obedience. Sometimes, obeying God means believing and doing things that the world will not understand, but we know that God honors our obedience to Him. As Genesis, chapter 7, verses 5 and 7 tell us, "And Noah did all that the Lord had commanded him. And Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him went into the ark to escape the waters of the flood." Fifth lesson, all things are possible for God. As Christians, we believe that the Bible is 100% true, and that means we believe in a flood that covered the whole earth. We believe in a God who warned, instructed, and protected Noah and his family, and loved creation enough to send animals into the ark to preserve them. God is capable of doing far beyond what we know, expect, and even understand. This was true for Him back then, and it is still true for Him today. He did it in Noah's situation, and He can do it in yours. As if there weren't enough evidence, Ephesians, chapter 3, verses 20 to 21 remind us of this truth. It says that He is able to do far more abundantly than all that we ask or think, according to the power at work within us. Let's reflect on these lessons for our lives. God bless us, warded His obedience.